Hi everyone, Tyler Manion here, NPC and FBB Pro League Vice President, and this will be your Tampa Pro recap for Classic Physique, brought to you by New Tech. So we'll go through pose by pose with first and second place. We had very good showings by Justin and Gabriel. First up is the front double bicep pose. Justin's front double bicep is very, very impressive. He has a crazy taper. His legs were next level, and his conditioning was even more next level. Now, his arms have come up in size, but they obviously can still come up more in size. But overall, this is a very, very impressive pose. Gabriel also has a very good front double bicep pose. He beats Justin when it comes to just the arms. However, when you get into the torso, the taper, and also the legs and the conditioning, Justin takes it to make it 1-0. And I think this is even a good point to point out here is, pictures and video, like I've said many times before, do not tell the full story. So for all the fans out there, you would never believe how different it looks in real life when you're actually at a show, because conditioning-wise, if you would just look at the pictures and video here, you'd think Gabriel was almost matching Justin in conditioning, but that was not the case at all. Justin's conditioning was a 10 out of 10, and Gabriel's was good for sure. It wasn't bad by any means, but I would probably say it was about around an 8. So the conditioning difference was very significant between the two, which comes into play on a lot of these poses. Next up is the side chest pose. This pose is a decently close pose between the two. You see again throughout the arms and the shoulders here, Gabriel has the size advantage. Torso from shoulder to shoulder and the chest thickness, they are very similar here. Getting down into the lower body, Justin's side leg is much bigger with a much bigger width across it with the hamstring drop and much more detail as well. Basically, when you go head to toe and look at the overall balance and conditioning, this pose goes in Justin's favor. The main thing he needs to do, obviously, is continue to work on bringing the arms and the shoulders up. For Gabriel, he can add a little bit more size to that side leg, but really he just needs to match Justin's conditioning to make everything shine through here for himself. That would make it 2-0 here. Next up is the back double bicep pose. This pose is Justin's weakest pose. However, he makes up for it by having crazy legs from the back. They're detailed, they are wide, and the conditioning was very, very good. With his back double, obviously the same thing. Arms and shoulders can come up a little bit more. He has a very good width. However, he still needs to fill that back in with more density and detail. So for Gabriel is good throughout the arms and the shoulders. Legs also from the back are very strong. He has very good lines and separation throughout his hamstrings. His leg width is also good from the back as well. When it comes to his back, he has all the lines in all the right places in his upper back. However, he was rounding forward a lot of the time during this pose. Not only does that flatten out any of the density he has in the upper back, but it really flattens out everything in the lower back and lower lats. So that's an area that he needs to work on filling in for sure. When you look at the width, obviously Justin is wider than Gabriel, so that's where Gabriel really has to play to his strengths and build up the density in his back a lot more. Overall, even with the conditioning difference, this is Justin's weakest pose, so I give this pose to Gabriel to make it 2 poses to 1. Next up is abdominals and thigh. Again, a very strong pose for both gentlemen. Here, you see again the crazy width and taper of Justin down into a nice small waist with conditioned and separated and detailed abs. Lower body-wise, his legs were very crazy from the front. Deep separation throughout the quads, a lot of density and mass to the quads. Very strong pose for him. Gabriel also has a strong pose, whether he is blowing out all the air in his abs or pulling it up into a vacuum. For him, he still needs a little bit more sweep to the quads from the front. And overall, the difference in this pose between the two comes down to conditioning. Conditioning. Because of that reason, with a very close pose that's very pleasing for both of them, this was, in person, very clear for Justin to make it 3-1. Last up is favorite classic pose. So at the beginning, Justin was hitting a side tricep pose. Gabriel hits the half front double bicep, basically half front lat spread. Looks very, very good on him. Really, to make it look even better, is he just needs to up that conditioning level to match Justin's and what Justin's was here. Because at the Olympia, Justin's level of conditioning is that level of conditioning that you see those top 6 to 8 guys in the world bring. And it's just a different level. And that's what you have to do when you're facing one of these top competitors. So for Gabriel with that pose, other than a little bit more quad sweep, really he just needs to dial in the conditioning as much as possible. For Justin, he needs to never hit the side tricep pose again for his favorite classic pose. His best favorite classic pose for him is his front lat spread. Very, very strong overall. You see his crazy taper, you see his small waist, you see his flaring quads, dense quads, separated, the overall conditioning. Now, of course, to make this pose even stronger, he can add a little bit more thickness and density throughout the arms and the shoulders. But even with those lacking a little bit, this is an extremely strong classic pose. If he would have just hit this pose throughout, it is a very, very clear victory for him in the favorite classic pose. He kept going back and forth, so whenever he was hitting the side tricep pose, I definitely could have leaned towards Gabriel in this because I think Gabriel's classic pose is more complete and pleasing that he was hitting, but Justin changed his favorite classic pose a lot. So even if you wanted to give this pose to Gabriel, it would still end up 3-2 for Justin, and the poses that he won were very clear, and it was definitely because of the conditioning. So Justin has an amazing frame that he's going to continue to fill in. He's made a ton of improvements. For Gabriel, he already has very nice lines and separation throughout his physique. So if he brings his conditioning to the next level, it's going to make him look more dense, and it's going to make him pop much more in person, which is what he's going to need going forward and going into the Olympia to try to move up places. What he can focus on for his physique is still a little bit more sweep to the quads and definitely adding more density to his back. Now we'll move into 3rd and 4th place. And before we do that, I just want to say the top 8 at this show was very deep and very impressive. This was definitely the deepest classic show of the year so far, and it just shows the depth of this division overall. So even at just a pro show in the season, you see how crazy and the quality of physiques that these classic guys are bringing, which makes it one of the most exciting categories, in my opinion. Now we move into 3rd. In 3rd, we had Dankovia. So Dankovia definitely came in the best conditioning that I've seen him in personally, but he still needs much more on that front. That's definitely his main critique. The second thing is he still needs to improve his thickness and density to his back. He hit his back double bicep the best he's ever hit it. It's the best it ever looked. So it's definitely improved, but adding that density back there is going to take him to the next level. He has very good full round muscles. You see it throughout his legs, his arms. His overall structure and small waist is very, very pleasing. So, like I said about Gabriel, Dankovia was definitely behind him in conditioning a couple notches. So even if he would get to Gabriel's conditioning, I think it would look very impressive for his physique. But other than that, improving the back more and more while keeping the waist small and improving his overall density, this guy is dangerous going forward. In 4th, we had Fabioni. Fabioni's physique is extremely impressive. I thought he did a good job of bringing his legs up a little bit more from when I saw him in Charlotte earlier this year. Now, his conditioning was just the farthest behind. That's the reason he was in 4th place. He needs to bring that next level conditioning. If he brings conditioning that is equal to what Justin brought to this show, this guy is dangerous for a lot of people, even a lot of guys at the top. His muscle bellies and fullness and taper and thickness and density overall throughout his physique are very impressive. So this showing wasn't really showing off that for him because the conditioning just wasn't there. But if he can improve on that while still improving the legs and bringing them up, this guy can make some unexpected noise at the Olympia. So hopefully he'll be able to do that. And it's another guy that can throw his hat into the ring to make this year very exciting. But like I said, This year's Olympia is going to be extremely stacked. So if you break into the top 15 in classic physique at this year's Olympia, you've done something special, because every week we see guys with really, really good physiques, and I think it's going to be a hell of a show. This will be your Tampa Pro recap for men's physique. So in first place, we had Medi. I feel like Medi did a very good job of filling out and improving his front pose. He brought up the size in his arms and shoulders so they match everything else. His chest fullness also improved as well. He has a very good midsection and detailed abs. Really, for him, the main thing he needs to improve is bringing up the size of his legs so he has better balance from top to bottom. Again, with his back pose, he's worked on improving his back more and more. His back's very strong. He could add a little bit more width here to his back, but what he's been doing, I would advise him to keep doing. To be honest, for him and his physique, there's not too much else I would say to change up, and I would tell him to bring this conditioning into the Olympia. In second, we had Ricardo. Ricardo's conditioning was also very, very good at the same level as Medi's. So for him, the main things he can work on improving is still he needs to be better at posing. I feel like his front pose, he could still show off his physique a little bit better. He can really show off the small waist that he has. He doesn't quite do that yet. He still needs a little bit more fullness to his chest as well to complete the front pose. Now in the back pose, he needs to make sure he's opening up his back all the way. He has a tendency to squeeze throughout his traps. And also you can see he needs to fill out his lower lats just a little bit more. When he does this, his back will be extremely good and be able to hang with the best in the league. So some small improvements here in his rookie year as a pro, but even with a little bit more posing tweaks and this kind of conditioning, he's going to be hard to handle at any of the men's physique shows going forward. In third place, we had Pooh. So I think Pooh has improved a lot from last year. His conditioning was very good, just a little bit below the top two, but still very good. From the front, you can see he needs a little bit more fullness to his chest. And from the back, you can see he needs a little bit more of thickness and detail, but especially adding more thickness to the lower lats. He's a little bit narrow in the back post, so adding more of that width to the lower is really going to help that, and adding a little bit more thickness back there. But this was a very competitive and good package that I think will also be very dangerous moving forward here. Finally, in fourth, we had Mario. Mario definitely made improvements from last year. The main things he can work on is still adding a little bit more thickness to the chest. He still needs a little bit more width to the back. And the main thing that he can work on for the rest of the season is dialing in the conditioning just a little bit more. The conditioning wasn't bad by any means, but it was definitely behind the top three. So the leaner and tighter that he gets, the more everything is going to pop on his physique. And if he does that, I think he can be a contender also moving forward. I think all four of these guys brought great packages, and second through fourth have a good chance of earning their own Olympia qualifications this year.